Welcome to segment 6, and the question this evening is going to be, we really confiscate guns in this country. The interesting thing is this president and Hillary Clinton have they have morphed from talking about gun control. Now they're out and out talking about gun confiscation.
Yeah.
And they cited recently, the president cited recently, veiled initially about how we know we can reduce the mass shooters. Other countries have done it, our allies, countries similar to us, Australia and Great Britain.
Right.
Which, what do they have in common?
They have both completely banned guns and confiscated all the guns that were there.
Exactly. And that was what, 2 weeks ago, I think?
Closer to a month.
Was it?
3 or 4 weeks ago.
And since then, Hillary has literally come out and said we should repeal the Second Amendment. And here's the problem.
And they both keep saying England and Australia.
Right, England and Australia, as if the plan worked out well for them.
Right.
The murder rates are.
It went perfectly.
Exactly. What could possibly go wrong with that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. It's interesting. What they don't get is Australia and Great Britain have always been sort of brought along with it's not a right, it's a gift that the government gives you. And when they got it taken away, they complained, certainly, bitterly, but they always complain in the context of, we like to hunt.
It's tradition.
Yes, it's a tradition in the country. That's very different than in this country. Right. It's very different in this country.
I personally think that guns are incredibly integral to American culture and history.
Sure.
It is tradition, but it's very historical, and it has a lot to do with our founding, and it has a lot to do with our revolution against England.
There's many facets of it too, you know, not just the self-defense
So
and the tyrannical forces or whatever, if you want to say it that way, or sport shooting or hunting. There's so many different areas where each one of those things even has their own little subcategories.
Sure, absolutely. But the bottom line, they keep trying to paint this. They finally, a few years ago, began including protecting your home. Remember how they wouldn't even say that. It was hunting. Well, we don't want to take away your ability to hunt. And people go, it's not about hunting. We don't want to take away hunting.
The hunters go, that's good.
Yeah.
But then everybody else goes, it's not about hunting.
Exactly. So they finally acquiesced to protecting yourself in your home because the Supreme Court said.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a point
Hello,
too.
McDonald.
Well, about that, or the hunters like, yeah, okay, well, I've noticed something within the gun community, for lack of a better explanation, that sometimes they support their own purposes, but they don't support the other ones. You know, like.
Well, right, and that's what I was.
Divide and conquer.
Yeah, like silencers. There'll be a group that'll, or suppressors. There'll be a group that'll support that, and then other groups that are helping with that, and they're all in the same community. So it's like, I guess. It's all
Well, and you know what? The Democrats are very good at divide and conquer. They have it down to an art form.
That's their specialty.
It really is. They have it down to an art form. They look at a block in terms of how much power does that block have. And if it has too much power to suit them, they figure out how to drive wedges in between them so you're at each other's throat. This started years ago with trapping. Trapping was always sort of came under the hunting umbrella, right? And under Clinton, he stacked he took Sierra Club people, all these anti-hunting type people, and put them in appointed positions in the U.S. Forest Service and all of that. And so the first thing they did is because an awful lot of people like to hunt. So the first thing they did is they carved out trappers. And the average hunter could care less about trapping. And so they just go, oh, yeah, okay, fine. And you're right, it's divide and conquer. They just splinter off a group. Now you get a little smaller. And they splinter off another group, get a little smaller. Right. They've done it with blacks. And they're all at odds. Blacks are at odds with Hispanics, are at odds with, you know what I'm saying? And they get this, if you don't vote for us, this is what they're going to do.
Right. When they come together as Americans and preserve our rights, just apply across the board.
Yeah. I think part of it too is just maybe lack of education or ignorance. I don't really know that much about suppressors.
Right.
And I don't hunt.
Right.
And so to me, it doesn't rank on my list of important things because I have a lack of knowledge about it. Now I understand it's helpful for hunting, but that's about the extent of what I know about
Well, it's
it.
also helpful for like the sportsman's club when you're shooting outdoors, you know, you help keep the noise down for your neighbors.
But the irony of suppressors, this is the true irony. In most of Europe, if you want to hunt, you're required to have a
Right.
suppressor,
Right.
which is funny because Europe is pretty anti-gun.
Right.
And yet even they go, well, too much noise.
So
You gotta have a
what be the
suppressor.
difference here in our country? You know, I think they put a tax on them and some places they're legal, you know.
Well, there are places in the US you can have own suppressors. There are
Oh, yeah.
states that allow suppressors.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm saying some states it's illegal, some states it is legal.
Yeah.
But there's, on any state you go to, federal law, there's a tax stamp that's required on it too. So it's like.
Yeah, right, you're paying a premium to do it.
Yeah.
It goes, I mean, it literally goes back to the 20s and 30s when, you know, the mob and all of that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And the average person has this misconception. They think you put a silencer on a firearm,
Right.
which it clearly does not. It
No.
makes a pretty good sound anyway. It's just not that thunderous line.
At least making it a decent sized caliber, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
If you have a
exactly.
small 22, if it's a really small charge, you might be able to quiet down quite a bit, but it's still gonna be.
It's still gonna make
something.
noise.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
still-
not like you're gonna shoot somebody and no one's gonna hear it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like a movie. But yeah, as we were saying, you know, not only when people came over here and populated America, not only did they need guns to hunt food for sustenance, but they also, and George pointed this out, they also had to protect themselves from wild animals that
Right,
did not
sure.
exist in the old country any longer.
very
So bears, mountain lions, things like that. They needed to be able to protect themselves from animals. Sometimes, no, I don't know about the East Coast Indians, but I know the farther west we went, we often encountered hostile Indians, hostile Native Americans that they had to defend themselves against in many cases. And then there was the issue of, that was one of the main issues when the Revolutionary War started, was the Great Britain, or England, tried to take the colonists' guns away. And
Right.
the colonists basically said, oh, hell no. We saw you do it to Ireland, we saw you do it to other places.
Right.
We know, and they did it to the Native Americans too. And they said, we know your MO, and we're not interested, and they
Yeah.
fought back.
The colonists were objecting to the tax on tea, which ironically is fractions of a penny, as I recall. Of course, it was back then, but
Right.
it's minuscule. It wasn't, I wasn't there at the time, despite what you may think, but I don't think it was so much the money as the fact that they were being taxed and they were not
They had no
represented
say.
in Parliament. They had no say. They just said, no, we're gonna pay more, that's all. That's it.
Yeah.
And
And they were probably taxed unequally than their brethren back in the old country.
oh, no doubt.
You know, and that really was a sticking point as well. Of like, you asked us to come over here and settle this new country and take it as yours, you know, basically stake your claim. And we're going through all these hardships on your behalf, and you're taxing us more heavily than the people who stayed back in their cushy life in England.
What literally ended up happening was the governor of Brits, well, they were all Brits, but
Right.
the governor, who was representing the monarchy, I think it was Howe or Gage, maybe it was, I can't remember, doesn't matter. Like now, today, sensed that the natives were getting restless over that and dispatched his troops to Concord and Lexington, where there was an armory
Right.
of colonist weapons, to seize the weapons.
Right.
And that was the oh hell no.
Yeah.
That
was the shot heard around.
Yeah, they shot it around the world, which I've read a lot about that. Apparently it was a Brit. The first one was fired by someone from the British Army. And how many were killed? That number, I've seen a number, they say 50, 70, something like that. But the point is, it literally touched off the Civil War. Trying to confiscate the colonists guns touched off the Civil War.
Right.
Touched off a Civil War.
No, Revolutionary War.
I'm sorry. Well, yes, that's true. But we were colonists. In a way, it was a Civil War. I mean, you're right, it was a Revolutionary War. But we were colonists, so yeah, we were, yeah. I don't mean confused. They didn't have blue coats, they had raincoats. Raincoats. And the colonists had junky, whatever thing that they wore.
They had whatever they could get their hands on.
And, you know, we love history. The truth is that the colonists probably should not have been able to win that war. But England was tied up, what was it, Spain or France, or a war with, I can't remember which one.
They were waging war on
It was,
multiple
yeah,
fronts.
they were fighting on multiple fronts, and in the end, here we are.
Well, and I think also having a very large ocean separating us was definitely to our advantage. It
Oh,
took
sure,
them,
sure.
it took them a very long time to get more soldiers and more
Yeah.
supplies.
Or even to communicate and get orders on how to handle stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was very much largely in our favor.
I think that the main
Home
point,
court
the
advantage.
main point about the confiscation issue is, if you think about it, on the surface, at first blush, it has to be, you have to be willing to have your gun taken. Now, it can draw out for a long time and get ugly,
Right.
but initially, there's 300 million guns roughly in the United States. Now, some people want one gun, but that's a lot of people. And I would say, what, at least half are gonna go, no? I mean, there's gonna be some percentage of those people who are going, well, it's the law, okay. But I would think, you know,
Yeah.
how many people do we know?
There's some weak
That are gonna
people
go,
who will
hell no.
volunteer, and
As far as letting someone come and take your guns?
Yeah,
Well, you know, it's a good question. Is it gonna come down to, there's a lot they'll say hell no, and there's a lot that'll just fold. You know, I think that anyway.
well, maybe. I think there's gonna be people taking pot shots. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, that's.
And it's not that I would advocate
I think
it, but
eventually that's gonna happen.
you will.
I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on how the government goes about it.
Exactly.
If first they make a law and they say, turn in your guns by such and such a date, there, as you said, there are people who will comply just because they're law-abiding
It's a
citizens,
law,
and that's what
right.
they do.
Right.
And then the people who don't comply and they suspect, that, you know, we still have our guns, by way of example, they may start to, you know, send, you know, as with other types of non-compliance, they start to send you letters, or they start to call you on the phone, or they start to knock on your door and say, you know.
It's gonna take a lot of time.
Over.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, no matter what, I mean, it's
Oh,
gonna take
yeah.
a lot of time. So my thought is, well, you know what, one way maybe around that too for some people, and maybe, I'm sure a lot of people consider this too, you know, to have firearms that they hide away somewhere. You know, give up their other ones that might have more documentation.
That's true, but I will tell you that they hang out such sophisticated stuff. You'd have to take it out in the middle of nowhere, where you have no connection to it, you know, traceable connection.
Right.
Not like your summer home or something, because they can go over your backyard with, they got a gizmo, just go over your backyard.
That's
and
gonna
tell
take
them
a lot of
something.
time.
Yeah.
I mean, house to house.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right. And I think eventually, if they were really serious about it, you know, that's what they would have to do, is eventually they send someone to, like, okay, we're coming in, we're taking them, we're searching, we're tossing their house, and that's when
Clean it up.
shots are fired.
Clean
Yeah.
it
You
up.
know, and you hear a lot of people say, well, you know, is law enforcement really gonna do that? You know, are they really be willing, or military members, are really be willing to kick doors in and take away guns?
I think most won't, but there'll be some.
But then I think back to, well, what about the Nazis, for example, you know?
Yeah,
Why would someone think that they would do that? You know, they're hurting other people.
and yet they did.
Yeah, right. So, you know, what's to say that it won't happen to certain people? Might not even be our people.
But again, historically, it's ingrained in our culture. Even Germany is a good example. Germans used guns for hunting and that kind of thing. And so when the government came along, the government sold it exactly as this government sold it. It's for the people, it's for the children. This is safety. And they literally grew up in a culture where they go, oh, well, okay.
Right.
That's not only Americans.
No,
Americans don't have that attitude.
we're kind of about civil disobedience
That's how we were founded.
in a large regard.
We are.
You
The
know,
problem is some that's getting in the way, but be that as it may. Their civil disobedience is my crummy guys should be locked up.
Right,
But then the way that's what makes the country great, because we all have our opinions.
right.
Where we get into trouble, and we talked about this on the show, one of the segments, everybody always talks about conservatives are the extremists. It's the liberals that keep going, drag them out in the street and kill them.
Right.
You want to own a gun, you should be shot with one first.
Right.
You don't hear that coming from our side.
No.
Right.
We always talk about, let's vote this guy out, you know, let's get him removed from office. We're looking for this law and order thing. And they're saying we're the ones who want to shoot cops.
Although on the flip side, we did also talk about literal head explosions.
And what?
Literal head explosions.
Yeah.
But that's a figurative thing.
Well, that's a, right.
That's like a joking type thing, not
Right.
make someone's head explode.
We're not actually
Yes,
looking
we're
to
not
have
talking
somebody's
about-
head
right.
blow up. It's a, wasn't that something on television? Didn't that come from TV?
I don't remember.
I think it did.
I don't- yeah, I don't
It
know.
kind of popped into someone's head and
I
brought
don't know who invented it, but I wanted to do it on the show.
Yeah.
Which never materialized, but,
We couldn't find enough heads.
but, you know, it makes me, when you're talking about who would do it, who would do the confiscation, if it wasn't voluntary and it became forced, who would actually execute that? And it puts me in mind of certain movies where people who work for the government are no longer necessarily the good guys.
Right.
You know, no longer necessarily enforcing the Constitution. They're enforcing whatever it is
The current government.
their bosses tell them
DON
to
do
do.
it.
Right, they would have to
They
do it.
love
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, this is the interesting thing, and there's a comment here, and it really does make sense. Clinton, we're talking about her, Clinton knows what every American gun control advocate knows, namely that a substantial number of Americans see their weapons as political tools of last resort. They won't relinquish their firearms at the government's request. Now, here's the catch. At some point, when they're knocking down your neighbor's door, sacking his house looking for a gun, even people who don't own guns at some point go, wait a minute, this is not right. Because that's the typical American culture.
But they're gonna be inferior and stay in their houses because they're not gonna have anything to spend themselves with. They're just gonna
Well,
deal with it.
it's true. I mean, you're right. I guess I have more,
You're thinking they're gonna protest in general and say the government has to stop doing this.
Right.
But I think by the time it gets to that point,
Right.
it's too late.
Exactly.
By that time, you've already got to a totalitarian government,
Right.
and no amount of protesting and free speech.
what's the quote? From time periodically, the tree of liberty has to be refreshed with the blood of tyrants and patriots.
You know, you need something to produce that blood.
So here's the line. Remember we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and I'm not advocating anything, but I'm pointing out,
Absolutely not.
I am pointing out just the sheer numbers. If there are 300 million firearms in this country, okay, if just 20% of them said no, what's that number come out to be? 60 million people. That is something like 10 times the entire military and law enforcement establishment.
Wait, you said it was people or firearms?
Well, we don't know. That's the problem is we don't have hard numbers.
You have to go by David's collection.
Well,
That's right.
we literally, we don't know that.
I've heard 80 to 85 million gun owners.
Okay, so let's say there's 85 million gun owners. 10% is 8.5 million people. That's still more. You see what I'm saying? And so if just 10% of those people go, no. Now, here's the interesting part, and this is the big warning to ISIS too. You're coming on our soil, whether it's the blue hat guys or ISIS or whoever it is. You're coming on our soil. Suddenly, the rules have just reversed. You're coming to us. Guess who the rebels end up being? Us. We're the ones who can go between the gangways and shoot you as you drive by. You just, what worked for you in some third world,
Crap ball.
I can say that, can't I? We're
Well,
on
on the internet,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
right, it's internet, shithole, is now, the tables just got turned. You wanna come and attack us?
Good luck.
You're on our turf now.
Right.
Now the rules have changed.
Right.
And you got, you know, come on, be serious here, Rick. How many guys do we know that are just going, okay, bring it on, bring it on?
Right.
You know what I'm
They
saying?
got their ISIS hunting kit from, well, there's a company that sells them locally.
Is it really?
Yeah.
ISIS hunting kit.
Civilian Force Arms sells a rifle with body armor and some other gear with it as a kit, for ISIS
I love
hunting kit. Yeah,
I love it.
check them out.
My birthday's coming up.
You don't have any R yet either. So
The one thing
I
about
know,
Americans,
I know.
the one thing about the American culture, we may disagree on politics and stuff like that, but most Americans think it should be fair. Most Americans, and there are those who obviously don't, but most Americans, if they see you're getting the short end of the deal, they don't like that.
Right.
they root for the underdog. They root for the poor schmuck that's getting screwed because they recognize they're next.
So the other thing, I have a question I got off Facebook too is about
This right now?
Yeah, about-
Somebody's listening to us on Facebook.
Yes, yeah,
Hi.
yeah. Well,
Thank you.
one of the guys from the club actually. He said, ask about what happens when your neighbors start ratting on each other. Like, I don't like so and so, so I'll report him having a gun.
I don't think that's gonna matter because they know who's got guns.
Yeah, I think generally for the most part they are.
That's what I kind of figured too. But I mean,
Yeah.
but I'm sure there are some people that maybe they don't know. Or
This is a fantasy. If you think you filled out a form at a gun store and it dropped off the end
at
of the
some
year,
point in time.
when they do that background check, they're supposed to delete that, and I don't remember what it is. Do you remember the period of time?
Some number of years.
That's what I thought. And then I've heard conflicting stories on that. I've heard where
They say they don't have the ability to do it.
right.
How can you not have the ability to delete something?
Yeah.
Well, I've heard that
Called highway.
if your dealer goes out of business, that one person said, well, then the records, after so many years are gone. But then I've heard, no, when you go out of business, you can turn them on to ATL.
You filled out a form that went to the federal government, which they're not supposed to keep.
So it did actually get sent in, like that.
Yeah.
I always was under the impression that they filled it out and they did the background check and they just signed off on it, and then the dealer kept that copy and never went anywhere.
It gets, it
Well, it's
goes,
all
you're entered in the
electronic
system.
now.
They enter you in the
Not
system.
all, like, I mean,
Well,
I
okay,
have
maybe not
paper
all,
form,
but the last time I bought a gun, it was all on the computer.
So when you fill out the paper form.
Actually, the last two times I bought guns.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
But the question is, when you fill out a computer, where does it go?
Right, that's one.
Federal
You
government.
can just-
Bingo,
you can just assume that,
okay?
right.
Now, they're supposed to, according to the law, my understanding, they're supposed to delete them after some period of time. But I have read where they have said, well, we don't exactly have a way to do that. How can you not have a way to delete
Right.
records?
Well, and,
You can delete emails.
right, hire some high school kid, he can figure it out.
Right, the thing with that was too, normally I thought was, their whole premise is they'll know that you obviously purchased a firearm because you did a background check, but do they know what you purchased? 4473, I think, has a serial number.
Here's what I see.
And yeah, I think that.
The bottom line, I think, is they're gonna know every phone call. All they gotta do is go back into the metadata
Right.
and go gun, comma, firearm, comma, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Semi-automatic, comma, and out Rick's name will pop, vomit it out of the machine.
Yes.
We will literally flood the floor, and they're gonna go, look, all these people, they've made phone calls, they've sent emails with this stuff in it. They gotta be gun owners. They round up Japanese who are American civilians, and no other reason than they were Japanese by look, by,
Right.
by nationality, no, not by nationality, they were American citizens.
Yeah.
Put them in
Most of
concentration
them were
camps.
second generation.
Right,
Well, and the question of neighbors, it's actually a good thing, and most of us don't really know our neighbors the way that we used to 60 years ago. And in this regard, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I guess my neighbors on both sides do know that.
Person I know.
Yeah, probably my neighbors on one side know more than the neighbors on the other side, but yeah, they know we're pro Second Amendment, so I suppose they could rat us out, but, most of my neighbors don't know me that well, so.
here's the other
Most
thing.
of them don't.
The other thing is, people like us have a school, and we have
Right.
students. I mean, this is a network.
Mhm.
Literally, it's like a neural network.
Mhm.
And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're connected, I mean,
Especially in the sport side of things. That is,
Right.
Everybody knows everybody all across the whole US. It's amazing. I've met a lot of people this past year just getting into it for the first full year with like doing pre-gun and so forth. So it's pretty interesting.
but you know what? It works in their favor too, because how quickly, now, Obama apparently has the ability to disrupt the internet.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. But how
It's
quickly
disturbing.
could you put the word out? Remember the guys who could stand on bridges? Remember them?
Overpass for America.
Overpass for America. Now, they didn't have any website.
No
They
website.
did just last minute communicate, we're gonna be on this bridge.
Yeah.
And people showed up. With all the contacts that we have, just thinking of us ourselves,
Right.
Facebook and all of that,
Right.
how quickly could you say, you know what, they're invading Chicago?
But how quickly can they shut that down?
Well, pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Well,
boom.
maybe not pretty quickly, because there isn't an on-off switch.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go, you get on the backbone of the net, you could be going through anywhere.
Well, and not only that, there's the internet, but then like, SMS messages, text messages, that's different.
That's a whole, that's a
It's
subcarrier,
completely
that,
different.
right,
Yeah.
that's a subcarrier.
Right, but I mean, I'm sure if it's not instantaneously like a light switch, I'm sure that fairly quickly they can shut down all that stuff.
Maybe not.
Or do
It's,
it by regional sections at a time, you know?
Maybe, but my point is, how
They were
quickly
determined.
could you get the word out? They're invading, ISIS is invading Chicago,
Yeah.
meet me at Roosevelt Road and whatever,
Right.
and get tons of people.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mass messaging, you know, up all your friends.
My shotgun's feeling, itchy.
It's missing your, the trigger on missing your touch.
Well,
Yeah,
we're
exactly.
hoping this doesn't happen.
Absolutely. That'd be horrible.
We're hoping this doesn't happen.
Yeah, well,
There's a
and,
lot of people all excited about it,
you
just
know,
like the zombie apocalypse.
Not to- yeah,
It
not
keeps
to-
getting worse every day.
not to get too much of a window into our private lives, but yeah, my father and I had a conversation the other
About
day
zombie apocalypse?
No, about gun confiscation, about the government coming for our guns, and basically we agreed between the two of us that if that ever happened, I said if that ever happened, it would be like the Unforgiven up in here, and he said, yes, that is correct. If you've seen that movie, it's
I have.
Audrey Hepburn is the female
Yeah.
star of it, and she's actually a Native American girl, but they kidnapped her when she was a child and they raised her as their own.
Okay.
And the Indians want her back, and so the Indians attacked this white family, and there's only like 3 or 4 people in this white family, and they just fight everything they have, and so the house is burned down. Half the family's dead, but they fought them off.
In for a penny, in for a pound.
Exactly.
And the other thing is, and we said this, I think, last week, or the week before, this ain't no third world country. We got guys who have highly sophisticated gear and get pretty advanced training. It's just not, it's not the same thing. It just isn't. Who knows? I don't know. I think we've exhausted.
I think we have fully explored this topic.
We've fully explored or exploited, probably both,
Both.
this topic. And all I can say is I certainly hope it doesn't come.
And by the way, in the comment I got now too about the network being shut down and whatnot, that kind of stuff, someone mentioned the phone company that manages the hard lines would probably put up a huge fight over it being shut down. But then I also wondered, I don't know what your thoughts are on it, I guess, but I wonder if that would even be something that would even matter if it's.
The thing about the internet is, it's not one thing. The internet's not like one cable that runs across the country.
Right, and that's what you.
So if you shut down whatever the source was in this region, you can get,
Right.
I don't think it can be
It's
shut down.
overlapping.
Right, I don't think it can be shut down, except, well, even if you did a pulse bomb, well, you would do without electricity yourself, but it's not gonna shut down the internet. And here's the thing about, in fact, I want to mention this the last time we talked about it, and I forgot about it. The whole idea of doing a pulse bomb, I mean, we go back in the dark ages,
Yeah.
but you know what? Our submarines aren't affected. Our aircraft carriers out in the Pacific and the Atlantic aren't affected. We have nuclear weapons all over the frickin' place. If they put us back in the Stone Age, we'll put them back into graves. They'll literally carpet nuke everywhere. You know what I'm saying? And then they like that. That may be good for them. Let them go eat their virgins. But what I'm saying is, this is, did you ever see Dr. Strangelove? I think I've asked this before. Did you ever see it, Rick?
No.
This is, if you ever want to see a truly great movie, it's Dr. Strangelove. And the premise simply is the
We drink
Russians,
a lot beforehand.
Yeah, oh, yeah. the Russians have
Drink
created,
Words for it.
the Russians have created the doomsday machine.
Mhm.
And what it is, because they can't keep up economically, it was a Cold War movie. They can't keep up economically anymore. So what they did is they created a machine that anybody fires a nuke, chain reaction, whole earth blows up.
Oh, wow.
But they don't tell anybody. They're waiting to release the information at a press conference at some show weeks later. Meanwhile, an American Air Force general goes off the deep end and launches a SAC attack on Russia.
Oh, wow.
And it's a comedy. As hard as it may be to believe,
Very dark.
it's a very dark comedy. But the point I want to make is, because you have to have seen the movie to understand this, the point is, if they do that, it doesn't take out any of our troops anywhere else in the world.
Right.
There are nuclear weapons all over the planet that we are in control of.
Sure.
If they nuke them somehow, not nuke them, but if they do pulse bombs over the Atlantic or in the Gulf area, they're taking themselves out. Of course, those clowns.
Yeah.
Well, they wouldn't have their
They're
cell phones to
they're
set up roadside bombs.
crazy enough to do it.
Yeah. So I'm not overly worried about that. I don't know, maybe I should. It is what it is. All right,
I don't know about you. I'm building a Faraday cage in my new house.
you can build it, mine's in. You get, I'm done.
I'm gonna have Andy work on it.
It looks a little funny from yeah. It looks a little funny from the outside, so I hang ivy from it. I don't think it's, yeah.
I would just like paint over it so that you couldn't tell.
Yeah, exactly. That definitely exhausts this subject. So, from all of us in our Faraday cages, to all of you, we will be happy to see you next week when we're going to be talking about.
I don't even know yet. We'll find it out on Friday.
We'll find out on Friday if we're lucky.
Right.
And we're always open to listening to ideas.
Everybody's Googling Faraday cage.
Sure.
Part of the lead chalice system.